This is a special feature on one of the biggest teams in Germany to have never won the Bundesliga. With 150,000 members, it's the third largest team in Germany. It's a team who introduced zonal marking to the Bundesliga. They worship a live animal as a mascot, and they boast multiple World Cup winners in their back catalogue. We asked the honest questions. How close have Eintracht Frankfurt come in the past to winning a Bundesliga, and what will it take in the future? As we learned from our research into FC Augsburg, the history of the football infrastructure in Germany is highly complex. To their credit though, they have adapted to the profound impact of recurring political and social change. And that offers a convenient starting point for this adventure into Frankfurt. We're going to assume that you've at least heard of the city of Frankfurt. If not, here's your Bamba Gascoigne starter for 10. Frankfurt is the 5th biggest city in Germany, with a population of approximately 733,000 people. It's home to the German stock exchange, the Borsk. It hosts the 4th biggest airport in Europe, handling 66 million passengers per year. It celebrates the polymath son of Johann Wolfgang, not Amadeus, but Goethe. That's right, the brains behind what most German literary aficionados would claim is the magnum opus of German literature, and that's the tragic play of Faust. Allegedly, it was inspiration for Nikola Tesla. More significantly though, Frankfurt is the home of Appelwein, or apple wine, and for our UK and American viewers, that's cider. Yeah, the 5% alcoholic fruit-based drink that we love and adore. Well, I do anyway. I'm sure some of you do too. But anyway, you're here for football history, right? So let's make that happen with a sideways pass that would make one Uwe Bain very proud. More on him later. Eintracht Frankfurt, where the English translation of Eintracht is United, were founded in 1899. That was as Frankfurter Fußball Club Victoria. Their nickname is the Eagles, and that derives from the city's coat of arms, which is a reference to the one-headed imperial eagle, or Reichsadler. Yeah, I said that right, Reichsadler. They have a living mascot. It's a golden eagle named Attila. Lovely. Attila comes from a nearby Hanau Zoo. Attila is 21 in her prime, considering that most eagles live between the ages of 20 and 30, and Attila has been present at over 200 different games since the 2006/7 season. The Eagles, well, they've spent 55 years in the top flight, making them the 7th longest participating team in the highest tier of German football. They've played at the Wahlenstadion since 1925. Currently succumbing to corporate needs, it's known as the Deutsche Bank Park. It was renovated for the 2006 World Cup, hosted 4 group games and a quarter-final that saw France knock out holders Brazil 1-0 with a goal from Thierry Henry. In the present 2004/5 season, the Deutsche Bank Park, well, they're averaging 57,631 for a home gate, which is very impressive. And actually, it's one of the 8th largest crowd attendances in the entire world of football as we know it. Now let's address the eagle in the room. The Bundesliga didn't actually arrive until 1963. Some of the elder fans of Frankfurt might, and have every divine right to, point out their 1959 German championship status, which featured a certain Don Alfredo. More on that icon later. Now, there is a parallel between Frankfurt and Leeds United, where their fans would argue that football indeed did begin before 1992. And as we've called out, the historical infrastructure of the professional game in Germany is highly complex. So to make this more digestible and to save us editing time, let's just put it this way. In the period from the founding of the DFB, the German Football Association, in 1900 up until the point of the inaugural Bundesliga season in 1963, German football was organised into different regions. The winners of the league in each of these different regions, or Oberligas, well, they would compete in a finals, which is effectively the German Championship. In 1959, under the stewardship of coach Paul Oswald, it was his third time with the club, by the way, Frankfurt qualified for those finals by virtue of winning all 6 of their group phase games. In a twist of fate, their opposition in the final was neighbour and bitter rivals Kickers Offenbach. They're 20 minutes by car east of the city on the same side of the main river in Frankfurt. Not just, I don't mean that as in like the main river, that's what it's called, the main river. We move on. And actually that's where Oswald had come from this season before. Oswald and Frankfurt, well, they went on to win that final 5-3 in extra time, thus becoming German champions for the first and only time in their history. That's going to need a big caveat. That was in front of 75,000 fans in Munich at the Olympia Stadion. And on the back of that title, they went on to represent Germany in the 1959/60 European Cup. Now, one of my earliest footballing memories is watching a grainy VHS tape of that very final in 1960. It was a European Cup final, one in which it featured a Real Madrid team with the great Alfredo Di Stefano and the mercurial Frederick Puskas in a team that beat Frankfurt 7-3 at Hampden Park, with 4 goals from Di Stefano and a hat-trick from Puskas. Frankfurt, well, they never won their local league again. In fact, they were runners-up in the successive seasons in 1961 and 1962, and in both times they missed out on a repeat of playing in those German Championship finals. Although significantly, though, they were a founding member of the Bundesliga in 1963, and they finished third in that inaugural season behind Maidalacher SV, or MSV Duisburg, or Duisburg as we know it today. Well, currently Duisburg, well, they play in the 4th tier in the Regionalliga West. We'll cover that another day. And the eventual winners of the inaugural 1963 Bundesliga was, of course, FC Köln. They're currently second in the Zweite Bundesliga, or Bundesliga 2. Hope you're keeping up. Frankfurt have come close to winning the Bundesliga on a few occasions, and in each of these near misses, they finished in 3rd place. One of those times was in the 1989/90 season under coach Jörg Becker. He was a GDR, or German Democratic Republic, refugee who survived a poisoning by the Stasi whilst manager of KSV Hessen Kessel. What a name, by the way. Survived a poisoning. What a story. They finished that season with 41 points. Now, I need to point out actually that back then there was only 2 points for a win. That's right, 3 points for a win was only introduced in Germany to the Bundesliga in 1995, as it was in other countries like Italy and Spain. In that 1989/90 season, they scored 61 times, conceding 40 goals. 3 times they scored 5 goals in a game. There was a 5-3 away win at Köln, there was a 5-1 home win to Stuttgart, and the same scoreline, 5-1 at home to FC Nuremberg. Top scorer in the Bundesliga that year was their Norwegian bagsman Jorn Andersen, he scored 18 goals. Side note, he had a spell as manager of Frankfurt city rivals Offenbach Kickers, but it was nothing special. Charlie Korbel, a one-man club, like a modern-day Thomas Muller at Munich, or for my elder English viewers, think Jimmy Armfield from Blackpool. At age 35, he played in every single game in that Bundesliga season at centre-back. And the other two people that played in every single game was that striker, Jorn Andersen, and the goalkeeper, Uli Stein. Korbel went on to make 720 appearances for the Eagles. 602 of those came in the Bundesliga, and he played a staggering 53 times in European competitions for Frankfurt. Korbel eventually retired in 1991, and he went on to run a sports shop in Dossenheim. Dossenheim is 85 kilometres south of Frankfurt. That keeper, by the way, Uli, or Ulrich Stein, what a legend. He played 224 times for the Eagles over a 7-year period, even played 6 times for West Germany. Now, remember that bad boy of Basel, ex-Augsburg keeper Marwin Hitz? You might remember him if you watched one of my previous videos. I did a feature on FC Augsburg because they're having an unprecedented season in the Bundesliga. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the description below. Anyway, from Marwin Hitz to absolute knockouts, let me just briefly talk about Uli Stein. Now, whilst playing for Hamburg in the previous year, actually it was in 1987, he once stuck a finger to the Augsburg fans, which resulted in a big fine. Actually, don't worry about Marwin Hitz. He wasn't born until the September of that year. And not content with that, he decided to raise the stakes through not just punching, but knocking out Jurgen the Cobra Wegmann, the striker for Munich. Yet, Stein knocked him out on the basis that the Cobra scored 2 goals past him in the Super Cup in that game. Needless to say, it resulted in an early bath. But the legend that is Ulrich Stein, he remains the second oldest Bundesliga player in history, yet he was still misbehaving at the grand age of 42. We pick up another near miss on the Bundesliga title by Frankfurt in the 1991/92 season. Frankfurt, that season, under the adored coach of Dragoslav Stepanovic, or Seppi, Frankfurt finished on 50 points. That was an agonising 2 points off the eventual winners, Stuttgart. They scored 76 goals, making them the highest scorers in the Bundesliga that year, and conceding 41. Had they won on the final day to Hansa Rostock, it's likely the title would have been theirs. That match with Hansa Rostock was surrounded in controversy. At 1-1, Frankfurt had a clear penalty shout ignored. They went on to lose 2-1, and get this, Rostock scored in the 89th minute. The referee did later go on to apologise, but it was little consolation. They ended up finishing third behind Dortmund, who themselves missed out on the title by virtue of Stuttgart having a superior goal difference. It's funny as well that in that season, Frankfurt, they were unbeaten to Stuttgart, having won 2-1 away and drawing 1-0 at home. The Eagles scored 6 goals in a game twice that season. There was a 6-3 away to Duisburg and a 6-1 home win to Stuttgart Kickers. Side note, there were 2 teams from Stuttgart in the Bundesliga that season, and they had polarising seasons. VfB Stuttgart were the winners, whereas the Kickers, they were kicked out of the Bundesliga. Yeah, they were relegated. A Ghanaian striker by the name of a certain Tony Yeboah, he scored 15 goals for Frankfurt that season. Leeds United fans' ears may well prick up. And again, in the following season, 1992/93, Frankfurt finished on 42 points. This was 5 points behind Munich in second. It was actually Werder Bremen yeah, Werder Bremen went on to win the Bundesliga that season. I'm thinking that Real Nico might be aware he might just have been born. Well, Frankfurt, they were unbeaten against Bremen as well, having drawn 0-0 away and won 3-0 at home. In that season, Frankfurt scored 56 and only conceded 39. Tony Yeboah, that name again, he was consistent. That season, he scored 20 times in the Bundesliga, which ultimately earned him a transfer to Yorkshire a few years later. But get this, right? Howard Wilkinson signed him in 1995 for a then club record fee of 3.4 million. That's having only ever seen him on Eurosport. How crackers is that? A young JayJay Okocha was in that squad too. He played 20 times and scored twice. 7 goals came from midfielder Uwe Bain, a quiet man who in his heyday was hailed as the best German player ever to make a deadly pass. Yeah, it was one of the most technically gifted midfielders of his generation. He scored 38 times in 150 games for Frankfurt. He even played in the 1990 World Cup winning side, but sadly didn't appear in the final due to injury. That same season included an administrative anomaly, one that I don't think I've ever come across before. That was in an away tie with Bayer Erdingen. Frankfurt's manager at the time, Horst Hesse, he had to substitute the Slovak Marek Penska for Slobodan Komnjosevic. Despite his name, he was born in Germany. So that, together with Okocha, Yeboah and Tuscadze, there were 4 foreign players on the field at the same time for Frankfurt, which was one more than the DFB regulations permitted at that time. Hesse, to his credit, spotted his error and replaced Penska after only 4 minutes. Frankfurt won the game 5-2 in regular time. No sweat, we move on. However, there was an investigation, more of a protest, and the conclusion was, the home side, they were given the points and a 2-0 win. Those 90s third place finishes, that's the closest that Frankfurt have ever come to winning a Bundesliga. They also hold an unwanted record for the most consecutive away games without a win, which is 32, and that ran from August 20, 1985 to the 25th of August 1987. I mentioned at the top of the video that Frankfurt introduced zonal marking to the Bundesliga. So on that note, it's worth calling out the decorated Hungarian footballer Gyula Lorant. He was the man responsible. Lorant was in charge of Frankfurt as manager, but only briefly in the second half of the 1976/77 season. They went unbeaten in that second half of the season. Again, Lorant introducing zonal marking, a concept that he pioneered whilst being part of the Magical Magyars, that Hungarian national team. In principle, they were marking players occupying a particular space rather than going off shirt numbers. This proved the undoing of an England team in 1953 who were humbled by Lorant, Sander Kosis and the mercurial Ferenc Puskás in a game that ended 6-3 to Hungary at Wembley, and it was England's first loss on home soil to a nation outside of the UK. Lorant took his pioneering ideas of zonal marking to Bayern Munich. Adam Meier, they finished 12th, the worst Munich finish in a season ever, and then moved on to Schalke. We lift the mood temporarily for Frankfurt fans to focus on their achievements in cup competitions, both domestic and European. In fact, there's an 8-year period between 1973 and 1981 which is arguably a golden time in Frankfurt's history. Frankfurt won the DFB Pokal in 1974, defeating Hamburg 3-1 in the final. Slight side note, Due to the 1974 World Cup being held in Germany, that DFB Pokal final was not played until August. Didn't stop the Frankfurt team from putting in those goals. And actually, to provide some more history, West Germany, well, they won that World Cup final on home soil in Munich at the Olympia Stadion, coming from a goal down to beat what has become since their bitter rivals, the Netherlands, 2-1. And that winning West Germany side included two Frankfurt icons, Bernd Holzenbein and Jurgen Grabowski. More on those two icons later. Frankfurt retained the DFB Pokal in 1975, this time beating Duisburg in a tight 1-0 affair. In 1981, well, that was the last win during their golden era. They won the DFB Pokal 3-1 over Kaiserslautern. Just out of interest, there were 3 1-0 wins in the run to that cup final. And in 1988, they beat Bochum 1-0 in the final. Uli Stein was in goal, by the way, on that day. And their last win of recent times, which some of my younger viewers might appreciate, was in 2018. That's when Frankfurt beat Munich 3-1 in the final, with 2 goals coming from extremely talented Croatian left winger Ante Rebic. Off the back of winning the DFB Pokal in 1975, Frankfurt entered the OG European Cup Winners' Cup, sadly now defunct. It was a remarkable campaign in which the Eagles nearly overcame a West Ham side featuring what would become the UK's most expensive transfer at that time anyway, Trevor Brooking. It also included Frank Lampard Sr. and Billy Bonds. After a 2-1 in the home tie, well, Frankfurt lost 3-1 away at the old Berlin ground and were sadly knocked out. Side note, Anderlecht, Belgian champions Anderlecht beat West Ham 4-2 in the final. That was the first of 2 times that Anderlecht have actually lifted that trophy. And Frankfurt have also lifted the UEFA Cup. That was in 1980 after beating German compatriots Borussia Mönchengladbach in the final. Again, just a piece of history for you on Frankfurt. They're only one of only 5 teams to win that UEFA Cup trophy. This was in a bygone era when the final was played out over 2 legs and away goals effectively counted double. Oh, Gonzo and I miss those golden days. What about you? What are your thoughts? Feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Well, Gladbach lost the away leg 3-2, and in the home leg, we tee up a cameo for what was then iconic teenage striker Fred Schwab, who, within 13 minutes of the game to go, came on as a substitute and scored pretty much with his first touch. And whilst the game ended 3-3 on the night, Frankfurt won the tie overall and lifted that trophy by virtue of away goals. As a side note, Frank Schwab, well, he never really lived up to expectations and only went on to play just the 21 games for Frankfurt. And Frankfurt, well, they've won that trophy again. Yeah, they won the UEFA Cup in 2022, and their route to the final saw them exercise a demon, beating West Ham 3-1 over 2 legs in the semi-final. Frankfurt, well, they live for drama, as we know, and the final pitted them up against a Rangers side that was managed by Gio van Bronckhorst. Gonzo appreciates that because he was an ex-Arsenal legend. Well, we liked him at Arsenal anyway. The 2 sides, Frankfurt and Rangers, well, they were locked at 1-1 for 120 minutes, and Frankfurt came out as victors 5-4 on penalties. Angskar Knauff, we've called him out before as a Frankfurt one to watch. Well, he was voted Young Player of the season and young player of that tournament. So that's 2 UEFA Cup wins for Eintracht Frankfurt. With all that success in the Cups, both domestically and in Europe, it only makes sense to put the spotlight on some of Frankfurt's most iconic players in history. Let's start with Alfredo Pfaff. I'm confident that Pfaff works. Yeah, or Don Alfredo, as he was affectionately known. Well, he was a left-footed playmaker in the midfield. He was blessed with exceptional ball control and was lethal with a free kick. Pfaff made 301 appearances for Frankfurt, scoring 103 goals. That's a very good return. Pfaff was integral to the Frankfurt side that won the German Championship in 1959. He was also part of West Germany's 1954 World Cup winning side in Switzerland. Side note, East Germany, well, they were invited but withdrew for political reasons following the uprising in 1953. There was a mass protest in the GDR at that time against the Sovietization or the communist influence on the GDR, where taxes were hiked and prices of essential food items were hiked. That sound familiar? Anyway, politics aside, West Germany, well, they defeated a Hungary side made up of the magical Magyars, that golden generation. They won 3-2 in a final that was just surrounded in controversy. Wing forward Helmut Ram scored to make it 2-2, but that goal came about from a blatant obstruction by Hans Schaffer on the Hungarian keeper Gyula Lorant. I mean, the TV cameras, as primitive as what they was back then, allowed everyone to see in plain sight that it was a foul and that goal shouldn't have been given. And the mercurial talent of Ferenc Puskás, well, he had a late equaliser chalked off for offside. That was despite the referee awarding it. There was a disagreement between the linesman and the referee. And a certain Don Alfredo, well, he was one of the dissenting voices which influenced the referee, who then disallowed the goal. That win in 1954 has been dubbed the Miracle of Bern, not just for the scoreline, but get this, for the fact that West Germany were a side being made up completely of amateurs. Makes sense, right? With the Bundesliga and the professional standards of German football not kicking in until 1963. The magical Magyars, well, they never recovered from the shock. And Don Alfredo, well, he turned down a very lucrative move to Atletico Madrid on the grounds that his wife Edith, she didn't fancy Spain. I mean, to be fair, it's not for all of us. Alongside his footballing status, Don Alfredo, well, he ran a pub and an inn, which he embraced after retirement, aged 36. Just think, that could have been a pub full of British people in Benidorm. Good call, Edith. Good call. And then there's Bernd Nickel. He played as an attacking midfielder and earned the nickname Dr. Hammer due to his straight shots. Nickel scored 141 times in 426 appearances for Frankfurt. That's across 1967 to 1983. And there's 1 UEFA Cup and 3 DFB Pokal winners' medals in his collection. Check out that haircut as well, by the way. And there's Bernd Holzenbein. He's an attacking midfielder who could play up front too. He scored the most goals for the Eagles in the Bundesliga with 160 in 420 games. He's got the same medal haul as his mate Bernd Nickel, but he was also part of a World Cup winning team in 1974. We've covered that already, but essentially it was part of a team that came from behind to win 2-1 against their rivals, the Netherlands. Sadly, Bernd Holzenbein, well, he passed away in April of 2024, aged 78. And we have Jurgen Grabowski, the big Grabowski. See what I did there? Grabowski was a versatile midfielder who could also play as a forward. He scored 109 goals in 441 games for Frankfurt, and he was a one-club man too. He went to 3 World Cups and was part of the winning West Germany side in 1974 alongside his teammate at Frankfurt, Bernd Holzenbein. He was even a Euros winner in 1972 when West Germany defeated Communist Russia 3-0 in a final that was held in Heysel, Brussels. Sadly, like Holzenbein, Jurgen Grabowski passed away in July of 2022, aged 77. Frankfurt is an international city, and that's epitomised by their Korean Cha Bum-kun. He's the first Korean to play football in Europe. He played 122 times for Frankfurt, scoring 46 goals between 1979 and 1983. He won the UEFA Cup with Frankfurt too, that was in 1980, and he was named in the Bundesliga Team of the Year for 1980 by Kicker magazine. And here's a special mention for my younger viewers. It's the Greek striker Ionnis Amanatidis. Amanatidis? Yeah. Ionnis was bought for €1.8 million from Kaiserslautern in the summer of 2005, and he went on to smash 49 goals whilst providing 16 assists in 158 appearances for Frankfurt. He was part of a Frankfurt side that were runners-up in the DFB Pokal in 2006. They lost on that occasion by the narrowest of margins, 1-0 to Munich, with a goal in the final by Pizarro. He retired in 2011. Amanatidis, well, he was supplied by the iconic Frankfurt midfielder Alexander Meier, who Gonzo and I have just spotted looks very similar to Marcel Sabitzer. Meier scored 3 in 5 games on the run to that 2006 DFB Pokal final. Actually, he was an assist machine. Meier ended up with 55 assists and 137 personal goals across 379 appearances for Frankfurt. Wow. Kevin Trapp, who's the current veteran goalkeeper at Frankfurt, well, he's just 1 appearance behind him, which is 12th in the all-time appearance list for the club. It feels like Trapp will end up breaking that record, if not in match day 27, actually. Frankfurt are currently being coached by Dino Topmoller. Topmoller, well, he actually played 16 times for the Eagles. That was back in the early noughties. It's quite an aggressive attacking midfielder. Dino is son of Klaus, and Klaus also managed Frankfurt, albeit for a single season in 1993/94. And Klaus's Eagles, well, they were close to bringing that Bundesliga title home. They were leading right up until the winter break. Sadly, they lost momentum and ended up finishing in 5th place. In the present season, Frankfurt are currently 4th with 45 points, which is level with Mainz. That's a Champions League spot. They are, however, an overwhelmingly 11 points off Bayer Leverkusen in 2nd. There are 8 games to go to see out this Bundesliga season, which could make all the difference between them finishing in that Champions League spot outright. The 8 games that they've got are against Stuttgart, Bremen, Heidenheim, Augsburg, Leipzig, Mainz, St. Pauli, and they're away on the final day, match day 34, to Freiburg. They also have a UEFA Cup quarter-final against Tottenham coming up in April, and that's the furthest they've been in quite a while in Europe. Last season, they were knocked out in the playoff round for the last 16, to get into the last 16, I should say, of the Conference League. They went out 4-3 on aggregate to the Belgian side of Union Saint-Gilloise. They lost to USG, the Belgians, 4-3 on aggregate. The big question that still remains is, what will it take? What will it take for Frankfurt to finally win a Bundesliga title? Now, that's a great question, and one that I think we can all agree on. Well, it won't be this season. That's definite, because they are 17 points off leaders Munich. That gap being evident through the 8 goals that they conceded against both Munich and Leverkusen in recent consecutive games. And the loss of their Egyptian talisman, Omar Mamouche, that's evident, especially considering their form without him. Now, since Mamouche's last appearance for Frankfurt, where he not only scored, but he also provided an assist in a 4-1 home win over Freiburg, since that point, Frankfurt have only won 3 out of 9 games, scoring only 14 goals. Mamouche, he scored 37 times and clocked up 20 assists across 67 games for the Eagles. 15 of those 37 goals, by the way, came this season. Actually, that's only in one half of the season, because he was sold in January. Yeah, so he had 15 goals and 10 assists effectively in half a season before he was sold to Man City for €70 million. Now, that money, to Frankfurt's credit, it has been reinvested. They found striking replacements, such as Eli Wahi, who's a big signing from Olympique Marseille. The young French striker, 22, he's yet to score, though, in 5 appearances for the club. But it's progress, right? Because Wahi, he's got great potential. Frankfurt also reinvested that money in a striker, in Michu Batshuayi. Unlike the French striker Wahi, Batshuayi, the big physical Belgian, he scored twice in 5 games. Actually scored 2 in 3 games. We can't also forget that squad includes the legend that is Mario Gotze. Gotze, who's won every award going except the Champions League, provides that steel, vision, flair and aggression in the central of the Frankfurt midfield. They also have experience in that squad with Robin Koch, 28-year-old centre-back. He's got international experience as well now, having represented Germany in a recent UEFA Nations League game. And they have the veteran keeper, who we've mentioned already, Kevin Trapp. He's got 378 appearances and 87 clean sheets. There are some bright sparks for the future of Frankfurt too. There's Angskar Knauff, 23, central midfielder, German. He's currently valued at €25 million by Arne Slot at Liverpool. There's Nemanja Collins, 21, right back, also German. There's Hugo Larsson, the Swede. He's only 20. He's in central midfield, and he must be learning so much from playing alongside Mario Gotze. There's Nathaniel Brown at left back. He's only 20. Again, it feels like there's a bright international future ahead of him if he keeps his head down and learns from the bright ones around him. There's Can Uzun, attacking midfielder. He's only 19. He's played a handful of games this season. Another one with a bright future ahead of him. And there's Jean-Matteo Bahoya, the 19-year-old French attacking midfielder. So in addition to all those bright sparks, it's critical that Frankfurt hold on to the club's leading goal scorer, which after Mamouche is Hugo Ekitike, Ekitike's got 13 goals in 25 matches this season. And it's all right scoring them, but you've got to keep them out as well. And outside of Kevin Trapp, well, you've got to keep all of your defenders. And they've got, alongside Robin Koch, they've got Arthur Theta. He's at left back. He's a Belgian with a bun, in that he's got a bun in his hair, and that's his trait. Well, he's kept 4 clean sheets this season. He's won 20 tackles. He's made 121 clearances, and all that inside of 23 games for the Eagles. If we take a look at Dino Topmoller, son of Klaus, well, he's beaten the big two in the Bundesliga in the past, and that's with his 4-2-2-2 or box system, which is fluid in structure, whilst creates a numerical advantage whilst they build it from the back. Topmoller looks for versatility in every player. He wants everyone to feel comfortable on the ball whilst being able to find space. His players, well, they rotate constantly in the attacking phase, shifting between formations to gain numerical advantage, allowing them to bypass the opposition press. He encourages the far side fullback to invert. Well, that opens up additional passing angles, but also options from which they can continue to circulate the ball. And they shift that ball from one side to the other in order to bypass congested central areas of the pitch and keep momentum going with their attacking shape. He asks his strikers to exploit half spaces, making underlaps, dragging defenders out of position, where they have highly experienced operators like Mario Gotze, oozing with vision and the flair and the ability to make that killer pass into those spaces. Topmoller's team, well, they adopt a high press when in defence, and they push as many defensive players as they can into the centre of the pitch, and that's smart because it makes it very difficult for the opposition to do anything meaningful in possession, especially when both time and distances between the opposition and the ball are at their shortest. Topmoller's record at Frankfurt as coach sees him averaging 1.92 points per game, with a win ratio currently of 59%. Looping back round then to the question of, well, what will it take for them to win the Bundesliga outright? Well, let's assume that they're able to retain their existing squad and make some valuable additions, where they would come off the back of securing a Champions League place for next season and some silverware in the form of the UEFA League. Well, who knows what Frankfurt might achieve next season. Either way, Topmoller, well, he needs to do better against the top teams, the likes of Munich and Leverkusen, whilst be ruthless against the lesser teams, the likes of which they've slipped up against this season. With that young squad and that dynamism and innovation in the head of Dino Topmoller, well, you just never know, do you? You never know where those Eagles might dare. What did you think of the video? As we ask and try to answer those key questions about Frankfurt's attempts, or repeated attempts, to finally get closure and win the Bundesliga. What did you think? I tell you what, let us know in the comment section down below. As we've mentioned before, we're more than happy to run a feature on any club. Doesn't have to be Bundesliga, it could be anywhere, as long as they're in the German footballing pyramid. And on that note, you can expect a video on Arminia Bielefeld soon, since they've got a rather tasty DFB Pokal semi-final against RB Leipzig. That's coming up in April. We've got more content to keep you satiated in the meantime. You can check out our review of Matchday 26 in the Bundesliga, and you can expect a preview of all the games coming up in Matchday 27. And as a subscriber, well, you'll know when that content is ready, won't you? Because you'll be subscribed. Anyway, absolutely no pressure whatsoever. Subscribe, well, that's part of your free will. Although it would be very much appreciated by Gonzo and I. And that's it. All that remains to be said is that we're grateful as ever for the support. He's been Gonzo, I've been Craig. You've been extremely patient. Auf Wiedersehen for now, and we'll see you again very soon.